Welcome to Underline This, the podcast where we unpack the big ideas hiding in the margins, because the best parts, they're between the lines. We have an exciting episode for today. We're going to cover Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. We'll start out with talking about an introduction to the book, an overview. We'll give you some information about the author, then unpack key themes, takeaways, memorable moments, quotes, hot takes, and of course, ratings and final thoughts. Starting out with an overview of the book, I wanted to share some interesting facts that I found while just looking up some research about this. Originally, Jurassic Park was actually supposed to be about a child scientist that somehow created a dinosaur clone. After reading this book and comparing it to that original idea, I am extremely glad that Michael Crichton decided to go with the original. And I guess he didn't have much of a choice because that original idea was actually rejected and he was forced to change it. Jurassic Park was published in 1990, and in 1993 it became a movie, which is pretty quick. It was almost an instant success, and it was inspired by genetic engineering that was going on during the 80s and extracting DNA, which is not possible, but feels real in the movie, is what inspired Crichton to go ahead and write the story and make that a focal point for being able to create dinosaurs. Now, that 3-year timeline between publishing the book and actually releasing a movie, that is extremely short. Spielberg bought the rights to make the first movie that was released in 1993 before it was published. He actually had an early manuscript and fell in love with the story so quickly that he bought the rights in order to make it into a movie. If you've read the book and you've watched the movie, you're going to find that there actually are quite a bit of differences, specifically around the overall feel. The movie feels a lot more light, and John Hammond, who is the billionaire that starts Jurassic Park, in the movie, he seems very lovable, but in the book, he's actually a villain. And the book itself is a lot more violent and dark. Now, you're going to find that one of the themes, and we'll unpack these here momentarily before taking a deep dive. I don't want to go to a deep dive now, but Crichton had a belief that humans can't control complex systems, which really has influenced much of his writing and creating the character Dr. Ian Malcolm, who's the mathematician and mathematician as well as chaotician, someone who studies chaos. And upon and to unpack these again, I'll unpack these later, but these philosophical themes include science without ethics and life finds a way, meaning that nature again can't be controlled. It's interesting that science gives us an understanding and feeling of control, but it really is up to humans. It's up to us to decide the ethics of what are we going to do with this information. And I think this book does a great job of taking that idea and giving a warning. While going through and reading this book, the question in the back of my mind was, can we clone dinosaurs? And I know a quick Google search would say no, but I was curious what would have to be done in order to make this possible. But the answer to can we clone dinosaurs is no, and not anytime soon. And the reasons why is that there's just no viable DNA. And it's interesting, DNA actually degrades over time. And so, unfortunately, dinosaurs, which lived about 66 million years ago, their DNA has expired over that long timeline. And the oldest DNA that was recovered is actually from about 1 million years ago, and it comes from a mammoth. Another problem with trying to clone dinosaurs is that there just aren't any closely related surrogates. Birds are the closest thing alive today, and even birds are just an example of millions of years of evolution changing. So another aspect, unfortunately, for why we cannot clone dinosaurs is that fossils just don't have DNA. And the idea of taking DNA from a mosquito that's in amber actually isn't possible. DNA in amber does degrade, so there is absolutely no idea there's no way that dinosaur DNA could be found. The interesting thing, and if you watch the news once in a while, you'll hear about de-extinction, which is the attempt to try and get as close as we can to something like a dinosaur. There's a company called Colossal Biosciences, which is trying to create and clone a baby woolly mammoth, and they're on track to have it born in 2028. There's also the example of the direwolf that was created. And when we say direwolf, it's not 100% a direwolf, it's just something close to it. Another kind of funny, interesting fact that I found as well is that Peter Jackson, the director of the Lord of the Rings, the first three, he's actually funding a project with Colossal Biosciences to de-extinct the moa, which is a large flightless bird that lived in New Zealand. And if you do a Google search of a moa, it just looks like a giant ostrich, if you ask me. All right, so let's talk about the story. And I'm assuming that unless you're Amish or live under a rock, you probably are aware of what the story is about. You've seen the films or are at least aware of its existence. So keep it high level. But Jurassic Park is about a billionaire named John Hammond who uses advanced genetic engineering to clone dinosaurs off the coast of Costa Rica on this private island in order to create an amusement park. Well, not necessarily amusement park, but an amusement biological park. He brings two paleontologists, Dr. Alan Grant and Dr. Ellie Sattler, and a chaos theorist whose name is Dr. Ian Malcolm, and a lawyer named Donald Gennaro. May have butchered that, but that's how I pronounce it in my brain when I read the book. And the reason why he does this is he's trying to get validation and buy-in, and also just erase any concerns around safety. And during this visit, a disgruntled employee named Dennis, I forgot his name, but essentially, he is someone who is disgruntled because he feels like he's not getting paid enough, he's not valued, so he's trying to steal a dinosaur embryo to to competitors. And so and he's someone that actually set up the security systems at Jurassic Park, and he sabotages it so that he can steal the embryo without being discovered. And as expected, doesn't go according to plan, and the dinosaurs escape. They run amok, they kill, and they eventually have to leave the island. And so it's a really fascinating book, and I want to talk about the author because I actually found that Michael Crichton, someone who is perfect for writing a story like this, and it makes sense when you understand his background and why there's these different themes, and why there's this constant warning of trying to play God or even trying to control nature, which is a lot more complex than we give it credit for. So Michael Crichton was born in 1942. He passed away in 2008. He Throughout his life, he was a author, screenwriter, director, producer, and physician. He got his BA at Harvard in anthropology, and he actually graduated from medical school from Harvard. So really just a jack of all trades and a Renaissance man involved in all these different unique careers. And his novels that he wrote in series combined tech, suspense, and science. Some of his notable works include, of course, Jurassic Park, which we're talking about today, the Andromeda Strain, um, Sphere, Timeline, Prey, the TV series ER, and he actually wrote and directed the original Westworld. And Westworld is an HBO series that has a lot of similar themes to Jurassic Park. He's one of the few authors to have been number one for his book, movie, and a TV show, all at the same time. And the themes that are commonly found throughout his books and series are ethical warnings and unregulated science. Let's talk about some of the themes and key takeaways that I had from this. So, number one, the main takeaway that I had is ignoring the warnings and placing profits over safety, profits over ethics, or profits over downstream effects and consequences. There's a quote I'm going to paraphrase from Mark Twain, who said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. An example of this that we see might be the Titanic, Ocean Gate, the fentanyl crisis. And why is that? It's because those that were involved in these unfortunate disasters were blinded by greed. They were blinded by green, is what I like to say, and they put profits first above everything else. For example, the Titanic. It was the biggest ship of its time, and it was seen as unsinkable. and there was no consideration as to what might go wrong. And as we know, it crashed into an iceberg, and there weren't enough lifeboats, and the reason for that is because they didn't think that it was possible that the ship could sink. So that's just one example. Another one, which is related to the Titanic, is the Ocean Gate disaster of 2023, where the Titan submersible imploded, killing five individuals. And that was on its way to go view the Titanic. And the founder of Ocean Gate was trying to find ways to make deep sea exploration and travel a lot more economical, to take um, guests to go see things like the Titanic. And because of the shortcuts that they made, and again, placing profits over safety, unfortunately, that led to the implosion. Another example that I found that rhymes with the warnings in Jurassic Park is the fentanyl crisis. Now, I again assume most of you already know about this, but 70% of all fatalities related to drug overdoses are because of fentanyl and opioids. The Sackler family, they're the ones that own Purdue Pharma. They downplayed fentanyl and opioids' addictive potential and really flooded the market and pushed doctors to prescribe it more frequently. Another example, last one I'll cite here, is the Chernobyl disaster, which was a major nuclear meltdown. And again, due to trying to find ways to cut costs, material that was used to try and prevent a nuclear meltdown was used with an alternative source, which led to the implosion. And that resulted in 350,000 people needing to relocate and 20,000 cases of thyroid cancer that was linked to the radiation leaked at Chernobyl. So again, this rhyme that we find in Jurassic Park is found throughout history, and that rhyme is placing profit over considering the consequences, profit over safety. So let's talk about some of the key themes. I know it's one of them, but again, profit, essentially just being blinded by profit, um, and just being blinded or even distracted by asking what if, and just thinking that um, the profit is going to compensate for anything that might happen from it, or even just like the joy or even the accessibility of whatever this product is going to be. Um, and unfortunately, I think when profit is placed over everything else, it's almost kind of like seeing what you want to see. The next theme that I'm going to talk about is consequences of playing God. So warning again. So this book is a warning against trying to control life and tamper with nature. There's clearly no full understanding or consideration of the consequences that leads to the chaos. And there's a great quote in the book that's given from Dr. Ian Malcolm. And again, when we go through the quotes, you're going to find that every single quote except for one comes from him, the chaotician. And the question that he says, or I guess the quote that I really like, that I think sums up one of the major themes of this book, is that he says, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. And that's a question that I actually like to think about. I'm not going to answer it, but I would invite all of you to do so. And that is, what do you think? Do you think that, well, clearly in the story, the scientists were reckless, and John Hammond was reckless, but I mean, could they have continued to have made the dinosaurs and just tried to increase safety protocols? Because it seems like they tried to, but nature found a way, which again is one other theme. I might be getting ahead of myself. But another one of these rhymes in history that I haven't decided yet, which comes down to not asking if you should, or maybe even just stopping to think about the consequences, would be nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence. And I know at the time there was an arms race to try and beat Nazi Germany, and so the idea was, well, it's better us than them. And even with AI, there's a similar race going on between the United States and the rest of the world, specifically China. And so, as we're moving at lightning speed to develop these technologies, is anyone really stopping to ask what the ramifications could be? And anyway, more to come on that. Next theme is chaos and complexity. So Dr. Ian Malcolm, we reference as being a chaotician. Actually, don't know if that's even a real profession in real life, but he points out that complex systems can't be predicted or controlled. Even small changes can have massive, unpredictable consequences, which, going back to the AI and nuclear weapons rhyme in history, the idea of this terrifies me. When it comes to AI and nuclear weapons, we've introduced mankind with new tools to billions and billions of brains. And these brains are people that could use these weapons for good or they could use them for evil. We know what they can be used for, so how can we predict how they'll be used? And that in and of itself is chaos theory, which again is found here in the book. And that's like giving gambling odds for chaos. If X is done, then the percentage of chaos is Y, which means that there's a high likelihood of chaos. So it's really interesting just to kind of take a moment and think about these things and just say, well, can we predict any harm that could come from introducing these powerful tools or this technology or even implementing this new type of science? Maybe that's something that we should do more often, is taking a moment to pump the brakes and think, well, what can we do to minimize the potential impacts of this? Next thing, exploitation and greed. The billionaire John Hammond, the founder of Jurassic Park, ignores all ethical implications, corporate responsibility, and is blinded by greed. Again, another rhyme that I mentioned earlier is the Sackler family. They're the ones who are, I would argue, are responsible for the fentanyl crisis and opioid crisis because they took a complete disregard to to the responsibility of, well, what if we just flood the system with this painkiller that is addictive, but it's not as addictive as people say it is. That just shows that they really didn't listen to the feedback that they were giving, or even just asking the question of, well, something that's potentially addictive and has some negative consequences if it's taken in excess. What I guess I'm ranting at this point. I'll stop there and just say that that is something that probably could have been avoided with more responsibility and consideration of what what could potentially happen. Next topic: science without ethics. In a lot of cases, innovation moves much faster than regulation. Another one of those rhymes in history, and I know I keep on saying that, but I just love the concept of it, is social media, or even just how quickly AI has moved. The reason why I bring up social media is because I remember when it first came about, it was awesome. You could stay connected with those around you. It allowed us to be entertained throughout the day. We could see what other people were doing. We could see funny memes and videos. But now we're finding out that, again, this just comes as we're taking a moment to see, well, what to ask questions and see, well, are there any consequences that we're seeing as a result of introducing this? And some of those include teen suicide and also just people increased rates of depression and isolation. We've never been more connected, but this is like artificial connection where we're just looking at pictures on the screen and we feel like we're connected with these people, but we're actually not going out and seeing them face to face and actually touching them, shaking hands, hugging, right? And so that's one of those that's one of those things that was introduced, but we never considered what the effects might be. Also, with artificial intelligence, this is still pretty early on, but even just within the past few years, we're seeing that this is going to be a big disruptor in almost every industry and facet of life. For example, one of the things I've been concerned about is, well, what about critical thinking? How easy is it for a student just to go on their parent's phone or even on a computer and then type into ChatGPT to write me an essay about World War II and to get something within seconds? I mean, in the mind of someone who's got a brain that's still forming, how are you going to, I mean, again, going off of incentives, of course you're going to want to, and of course someone with a half developed brain is going to want to go with the path of least resistance and just get something that they can take. And again, I guess the internet is already like that to some degree, but still, I mean, critical thinking, I think, is just going to go downhill, especially for students. So I'm not optimistic for what the future looks like, especially when it comes to education, artificial intelligence, but we'll see what happens. So Hope I'm proven wrong, but this is just my alarmist, I guess, inside coming out. All right, let's see if there's anything else that I want to talk about with science without ethics. We talked about AI and social media. We talked about how, oh, actually, I didn't mention this. So going back, let's backpedal a little bit. Science without ethics. I just think it's so funny that the park was built and the dinosaurs were cloned before even inviting experts, whoever the experts may be, are invited to give their validation and review the park. And that includes the lawyer who is addressing the concerns from the board of Jurassic Park, and also just bringing in paleontologists who are leaders in the field. And I guess those probably are the best experts out there, but it's the lawyer who brings in Dr. Ian Malcolm, the chaotician, to go in there and just review and see, well, is this truly a safe place? And before he even gets there, he's already saying, no, it's not. All right. One of the coolest themes I think to analyze is that nature finds a way. So the scientists in the park, they do attempt to try and put some guardrails in place. Some of those guardrails being making all the dinosaurs female. I don't know how you do that, but it's interesting. And just going along with that theme of nature is unpredictable, it's complex and so powerful, it really is kind of foolish to think that we can control, that we have complete control. I'm referring to mankind in general, just having complete control over nature. Because in some ways, it seems like we do. We have some really innovative and powerful technologies, but we don't have complete control. That's something that needs to be acknowledged. An example of just how nature finds a way is look around, look at our biology today versus 66 million years ago. Somehow nature has found a way to adapt and change its biology for all the species around here. And that's just one of those great mysteries within nature. And we really should just respect its power to evolve and adapt. Now, related to just the idea that man has control over nature is human hubris. For those of you that know what hubris is excessive pride or overconfidence. And I think it's interesting to note that in Greek tragedy, hubris was seen as defiance of the over the gods, which is really what we're kind of seeing here in Jurassic Park. We're seeing defiance over, if you want to call it God, nature, or the universe. And John Hammond is that overconfident and arrogant figure with too much influence. And I don't want to disregard that, again, assuming the man, I mean, we know that the man's a billionaire, so he's clearly accomplished and done some remarkable things. I mean, he's brought dinosaurs back to life. But I almost see this as a scientific Icarus flying too close to the sun with his his new found power. Dr. John Hammond has exploited this power, and he flew too close to the sun with his achievements and his ambition. All right, now we're going to talk about some memorable quotes and moments. So first, I should give a disclaimer that all these quotes, except for one that I really enjoyed, all come from Dr. Ian Malcolm, who is such a rock star of a character. And I love that they have Jeff Goldblum, who plays him in the movie, because really he does such an excellent job in the film. And in the book, he's just he's so much fun to read and just hear his wisdom come out as he's witnessing everything that's going on. So without further ado, let's start with the first quote. Discovery is always a rape of the natural world. What does this mean? This quote to me represents how science leads to exploitation rather than respect. We talk about how when there's discoveries or maybe even a new product that's created, whether it be AI or maybe using the power of opium to help numb pain. I mean, those are really powerful things, but we don't take it. I think respecting these newfound innovations is asking questions and just not assuming that it can only be used for good. The next quote also comes from Dr. Ian Malcolm when he says, all right, let me just read the quote. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, but your scientists didn't earn the knowledge for themselves, so they don't take any responsibility for it. This quote just shows that reckless innovation that occurs within this world. And another one of those rhymes of history. I was thinking about Theranos with which is the Elizabeth Holmes, um, like the story of Elizabeth Holmes, who started a company where they operate in the mindset of move fast and break things. It's okay. And they're the ones that try to develop a technology where just with a really small prick of blood, they could predict all of they can give you a rundown of your health and let you know where you're vulnerable without having to do major tests just from one prick of blood. And they clearly had to fake their way. And again, it's going through that entrepreneurial mindset of move fast and break things, where in some cases it has worked. For Apple, it has, but for Theranos, no. I mean, not you can't have that mindset when you're dealing with people's lives. So it's one of those painful life lessons. All right, next quote. Life breaks free. Life expands to near territories. Painfully, perhaps even dangerously, but life finds a way. Again, this is a quote that just reinforces the idea that nature, it's unpredictable, especially in complex systems. The next quote, the planet is not in jeopardy. We are in jeopardy. We haven't got the power to destroy we haven't got the power to destroy the planet or to save it. But we might have the power to save ourselves. I love this quote because it talks about and acknowledges human limitations. And human limitations, when compared to the vastness of nature, is is inferior. The next quote. God creates dinosaurs, God destroys dinosaurs. God creates man, man destroys God. Man creates dinosaurs, dot, dot, dot. Now, this quote just highlights the human hubris and absurdity to try and control creation. And also just kind of the irony that, again, God creates man, man destroys God, man creates dinosaurs, dot, 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 meaning that maybe dinosaurs will try and destroy man. So again, it's really just kind of a fun quote that Dr. Malcolm uses. All right, here's a quote that actually isn't our favorite chaotician, and it comes from Alan Grant, who's the paleontologist in reference when he's speaking about the management of Jurassic Park. He says, they are aggressive, greedy, and have no idea what they're doing, which is really fascinating that a paleontologist, when just looking at what's going on, that's his take. Now, our last quote from Dr. Ian Malcolm is this. The problem with Jurassic Park is not that it doesn't work. The problem is that it works too well. This just highlights that innovative success without safeguards can lead to some disastrous results. So I hope you enjoyed those quotes. Again, Dr. Ian Malcolm is a stud. I love that Michael Crichton created this chaotician, or this concept with this character who's just going through and just giving these golden gems of wisdom as he's witnessing everything that's going on. All right, so let me give you some of my hot takes on Jurassic Park. First, this is an extremely creative. I love the philosophical depth, and I really enjoy the storytelling and also just the combination of tech and science. And I'm also someone that loves dinosaurs. I was one of those kids in the early days that was obsessed with dinosaurs and loved to go to the dinosaur museum. So it's great. It's such an enjoyable book. I'm a little ashamed of myself that I waited so long to read it. I'll also add that the book, and I find that it's like this in many ways. In most cases, it's like this, but the book is way better than the movies. And the reason for that is because the book has better character development. I really like the portrayal of John Hammond in the book versus in the movie. In the book, it makes sense that, and let me take a step back. John Hammond in the book is a villain. There's no dodge around it. He's not likable. You can see that, yes, he is someone that is blinded by greed, and it makes sense that you have these results because of someone like him trying to create the park. Now in the movie, it just it doesn't make sense that you would have so much corporate irresponsibility from someone who is loving, fun, and the ideal grandpa. I mean, he's seen as just a really likable character, and they make him too cute. When in the book, Yeah, it is definitely not the case. And I would argue that you could not have someone like that with that and put them in charge of a place like Jurassic Park and not get those same results. So I found that the book was more believable in that regard. Now for ratings. Yeah, let's go into ratings. I give Jurassic Park 4.75 stars. Why is that? Because it is excellent. I try not to read books that don't just hook me. And this is one that came from a good friend of mine that said this is his favorite book. He reads it all the time. And I loved it. I think this is a really entertaining story. Again, it has a lot of substance, inspire critical thinking. I loved reading this and just making those connections, again, with those rhymes of history that I keep on bringing up. Sorry, if you had a nickel for every time I said that, you'd all leave this podcast as millionaires. So I highly rate this book. In final words and in departing, I want to share a couple words of wisdom and another quote from another author. So my final words are this: let's learn from the past. Let's keep our eyes open when history rhymes. And that's the message I got from Jurassic Park. And I found a quote I want to leave you with by Isaac Asimov, who's the author of Foundations. That's another book I highly recommend. It's short, powerful, and the main idea of that book, without giving away too much, is minimizing the effects of a catastrophe. And Isaac Asimov says, the saddest aspect of life right now is that science gathers knowledge faster than it gathers wisdom. Let's all learn from that. So, in conclusion, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you listening to this. Please give us a follow on social media or wherever you get podcasts. Have a great day. Bye bye.